Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us and thanks for being part of our community. My name is Valon Kolika and I'll be your host for today. Now, if you noticed, I'm not sure if your attendance side, but at least from our side, we are having some technical issues with the Q&A window. And hopefully it will come back, but seems like as of right now, we're not able to see that feature. So moving forward, if you have issues viewing the stream at any time during the presentation and are using the web browser version of Teams, you can just simply refresh your browser. And if you're using the desktop app of Teams, please exit and rejoin. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared publicly. We will post the recordings on our community at aka.ms/security-webinars. Now, closed captions in several languages are available during the live broadcast, that you can enable them by clicking on the CC button located at the lower right corner of your screen. We often get many questions on these webinars, and we will do our best to respond to all of them in real time. In the event, so since this time the Q&A is not working, perhaps maybe we can utilize our tech community forum. In fact, I'm going to have a browser here opened on my side, and you can locate it at aka.ms/Azure Network Security Community. So this is the short link for the tech community Azure Network Security Forum. I'm going to repeat it once again since we don't have the option of the Q&A. aka.ms/Azure Network Security Community. If you're listening to this after the fact as a recording, that's also a great place to ask a question. And we love to hear your feedback on how we can improve on these webinars, and you can do so at aka.ms/security webinar feedback. I would also like to invite you to join our public community by visiting us at aka.ms/security community. Now, this is the best way to ensure that you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements. On our community, you can speak directly to our engineering teams and create our security products. And you'll also be able to influence our product designs and get early access to changes by doing things like participating in private previews, which you can sign up for at aka.ms/securityprp. You can request the features, give feedback, review our product roadmaps, register for events, or just simply join webinars like this. We believe that the best way to improve our products is by removing any barriers between you and the people that create them. So we hope you'll join us. In today's session, Camila Martins and Toby Otolorin will go over the use of Azure WAF policies and how to protect your web application at different association levels. Both Camila and Toby are program managers, part of our Azure Network Security GTP team. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to them. Camila, Toby, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Valon. Welcome, everyone. My name is Toby, as Valon has mentioned, and joining me today is Camila from my team. That's the Azure Network Security team, and we represent the customer experience engineering. So we help customers to try out our product, make sure we get feedback from them, we get review information, we get feature gap information. So that's the team that we are from. And joining us as well from my team is Mohit, Anthony, and Ashish. They'll be taking some questions on the side while we are having this webinar. So if you have any questions, as Velon has described, due to the challenges we are having right now, you might have to use other channels to get your questions across. We're very glad to have you today because we are excited to talk about how our products work. We talk about optimizing the features of this product to make sure that you are taking advantage of all that our features are capable of providing to your network security environment. Again, one thing I always say to customers is, for me, I always believe that you can never have too much security. So the more you learn, the better. Education never finishes. So yeah, without further ado, I'm just going to go straight into today's topic. So today, the title for today's webinar is using Azure WAF policies to protect your web application at different association levels. So if you're familiar with WAF already, that's fantastic. If you aren't, so WAF is Web Application Firewall, and we use it to provide security at application layer. So for your layer 7 workloads, how do you protect them from external attacks? How do you protect them from DDoS attacks, from volumetric attacks? Basically, how do you make sure that legitimate content is served to legitimate users? So basically, that's what we are trying to talk about today. And we'll have our agenda to go this way. We'll do a quick overview of WAF again, just briefly to let us know why it's very important, what are the key features, what are the things we can learn from today's webinar that we didn't know before. Then we'll review how you can use WAF policies in different ways to meet security needs for different resources in Azure. And then we're going to have a quick demo session, and then we'll take a few question and answer, hopefully time permits. So we'll make sure we try to keep to time. And yeah, that's how we are going to go into it for today. Please feel free to, if you have a question that you think everybody can benefit from, please indicate that when you're asking the question so we can mark that down towards, so that we can take it together towards the end of the demo session. So Azure WAF provides some features. What we use it for basically is for security. And thankfully, it comes with our load balancing platform. So if you have CDN, Application Gateway, or you use Front Door, you are likely to have seen it, or if you have not seen it, then I think you should, because it's super important that you know how it works. We take good advantage of it. So in the diagram I have here to my right, the Application Gateway is the icon in green in the middle. And when placed at the entry point for your request, which is the arrow on top of that, the request comes in, and then about 3 different things would happen. Would have the request will be it will go through the load balancer for good distribution. There will be security through the WAF, and there will be content management. So basically, how are you trying to get access to, how are you trying to save the content in a well-distributed manner? So now, how do you, talking from the security perspective of this, what do we do for you? How do we monitor this process? How do we make sure that once it gets through this process, it can go down through the arrow that goes down to the workloads, and what kind of workloads do we have? And how do we make sure that the security to each of these workloads is the right one and the appropriate one, depending on how sensitive the content they serve, what kind of content do they serve? Is it private information? Is it PCI information? Is it just static web pages? Do they have access to backend database? So basically, what kind of workloads do they carry? So those are the kind of things that we look into, and different ways you can use WAF to meet those security needs. So to my left, again, just a brief overview. There's a powerful custom rule engine that helps you to do like geo-filtering. You can say, hey, we don't want access from this location. You can use IP for your restrictions. Say, okay, this particular IP prefix, we do not want this here. You can do HTTP parameters filtering. You can use request headers. You can use size. You can use different ways to restrict access to your workload. Then also we have the pre-configured OWASP top 10. So that's the managed rule set. And if you are aware of the OWASP top 10 already, there's a lot of attack that's been happening recently. And they've always been there, but in the last 4 years, if you look at the bulletin review for common vulnerabilities within the last 4 years, you will see a whole lot of attacks and how they've changed, how we've been having more, especially like SQL injection. I have a slide to show you some more information about that. Also, we have bot protection because we have integration with Microsoft Threat Intelligence. So if you're not aware about Threat Intelligence work at Microsoft, it's amazing. It connects to the Microsoft Intelligence Graph. It has the capability for malware protection, for different forms of attacks. It's there's access to malicious domain information as fast as possible because it feeds from a consortium of security outlets. So it's super important that it remains turned on into alert and deny mode for the most part. And all of these, they are they're easy to configure, whether through Portal, API, PowerShell. So all of these, there's support for it, there's documentation, and there are so many ways and we provide a community that's very active in making sure that your environment has the resources and the support that you need to configure. So please stay with us during this seminar. We're going to go through our different example. We have a use case for an hypothetical juice shop with different application access request access that we're going to need for the different workloads for that hypothetical business, and we will do a demo to show you how that works. So this is a slide I threw in here just to give you a visual information of how much attack has really how voluminous it's been recently. To my right in blue is where you have a lot is where you have representation for injection. So SQL injection, PHP attack, all of these form of injections, they've really increased over the years. And one of the things you can take advantage of from the managed rule set is these are the things that are protected there. So if you're not aware before, this gives you visuals into what happens. Now, when you create an application gateway with backend pool, you must associate the backend pool with one or more request routing rules. And these request routing rules are very important. We'll get into it later because you will see how you can use these request routing rules to specify how you want to manage security of access that gets to those backend loads. And you must also configure health probes for each of the backend pool on your application gateway. So when a request routing rule condition is met, the app gateway forwards the traffic to the healthy server, depending on how you have set it up. So another reason why I threw this slide in here is when that access is being made, a lot of things happen. And depending on the kind of data that you have, there are different types of attack that happen. And you can have server-side request forgery, cross-site scripting. If you pass data from in and out in your environment, you're most likely going to be susceptible to XML external entity attack because of that passing of data in and out every now and then. So if you are aware of the thousands and millions of this kind of occurrence happening every year, then I feel like you're going to feel very responsible to make sure that you have the appropriate security for each workload. In a situation where you're managing the same type of workload, one global WAF config might just be fine for you. But with different types of workload, different access, different types of content being served, will come the need for different types of security for each of those workloads. So it's super important that this is looked into. And let me give you one of the examples I always give my customers is if you have an application that uses, say, my SQL and PHP application, and you happen to use manually constructed SQL queries instead of using prepared statements. One of the things that you'll be doing is you'll be exposing some of those applications to SQL injection. And also the same thing with all the other OWASP top 10 attacks. And before I go forward, I wanted to use the opportunity to also mention that we have WAF integration now, and that you should take advantage of this resource. What we are able to do with Sentinel WAF integration is you can send WAF log information to Sentinel, and there you can do some, you can detect anomalies, you can use the Sentinel to generate patterns, and you can respond to threats right from there. There are also pre-configured filters that you can work with. If you're familiar with how count-based threat hunting works, how you set a threshold, and then you can create a logic that, okay, when this happens, do this for me, or when this happens, do that. You can also configure logic apps to make this response. You can also use indicator. There are also indicators of compromise that can be taken advantage of. So you will find this very useful. There are great examples. There are pre-configured filters that have been made there. There's also a very fantastic blog post in our network security, in our tech community environment. So if you read that, it will bring you up to speed. We also have Azure Monitor Workbook, which is very fantastic. So if you go through our GitHub page, you'll find that there. You can take advantage of that workbook too. It gives you visualizations into what's happening in your environment. You can see the common attack that is specific to your environment, to your specific resources. You can see how often they come. You can see the IP addresses from which they're coming from. You can easily reduce how much work your application gateway would have to do by reducing the noise, because the more noise you have, the more resource intensive it becomes. So you want to make sure that what you're getting is what is required or what is necessary, and every other thing can easily be filtered out.
Great, Toby. Thanks for reminding the blogs and all that. I just wanted to remind the folks, since we have lost the Q&A ability. In fact, I'm going to share here very quickly just to kind of make sure that they're landing on the right page when we were talking about earlier, especially for the ones who joined later in this session. So just quickly, I'm going to share my screen and and take this chance. So the questions you want to raise and you want to go to the tech community, this is the short link. So aka.ms/Azure Network Security Community. And the blogs that Toby was mentioning earlier, the short link for that is aka.ms/AZNetSec blogs. So in regards to the questions for today, once you come to this tech community page, and I'm going to start presenting here. Just a second here. Okay, so need to stop presenting and not sharing. So basically, we're gonna go to in here. This is gonna land you right here, and Ryan created a discussion space, so you can just simply click in here, and then you'll have the option to start a discussion, basically, and you can say reply and enter your question. And hopefully we'll be able to get that and verbally communicate to you the answer in this. So sorry to stop you, Toby. Please continue. Let me see your share first, if you don't mind, and then we can move on. Can you share your desk?
Sure. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we're good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So here, the reason why we said we wanted to communicate this information about WAF policy configuration is because one WAF configuration is not always enough. And based on some of the things I've discussed earlier, you always have reasons to configure specific security settings for different workload. In this image that we have here to my right, you can see there are like 4 different types of workloads here. There's the VM, showing up there in blue with the computer icon. Then after that, there's the Azure App Service. So you can have an app, you can have VMs, you can have AKS, you can have, basically, you can have different types of workload. And these different workloads, they come with different types of applications. You could have an application that is just a static website, just for information, or like, like a biography. Nobody needs to do anything there. And then you can have a website where there's payment processing going on, and you want to make sure that it's PCI compliant. You want to turn up every form of sensitivity as much as possible. And then you can have, say, an employee login portal where you only want people within your network to access it. So you can see how each of these type of application and workload will require different security configuration. So for a website that doesn't really have any form of database connected to, really just a text website, you might not need to turn up SQL or SQL injection on that website, but you can apply that to a place where you have collection of items, or like a catalog that you are sharing with the public. So for these different reasons, these are the reasons why you need to be able to configure different policies. So how do we do that? We're going to talk about that shortly. But again, in summaries, you need there are application specific demand that you're going to need. There are regional access demands. There could be data inputs demands. Sometimes you need to create like a free form entry so that customers can provide feedback. And in that free form entries, people can use different things that could easily trigger certain kind of attack scenario. So you want to be careful that, okay, how do I manage this? And at the same time, making sure that this is well controlled and the information coming in is properly stored without, constituting any form of compromise. And then how do you set up exceptions for false positives? So these are kind of things that you can do at different WAF policy layers. So when you do that, it gives you you are able to associate your WAF policy with your application gateway, and the policy will be able to take effect on that particular level or on the particular application that you want it to do. So if you're not going to be using one WAF to, if you have noticed that one WAF is not working just fine for you, then this is where you want to take the information that we're trying to provide here. The different backend resources will eventually require different security settings for the different access method. So some part of the website would involve you to make sure that you continue to constantly monitor what's going on there, look at the log files, and then make proactive action to say, okay, we're going to need this, or we're not going to need that anymore. So that's what the WAF policy will help us to do. So we have about 3 different ways we can do that. And this WAF allows us to do the global WAF level, the regional WAF, and then the per URI. So in this particular case, global WAF will be the WAF that you configure for the whole application gateway, and everything that's happening in that application gateway would be inspected or would be treated by that WAF. But on the second layer, you can then also go and create a listener that says, okay, this listener should be applied for just a particular website. And then you can go also further down and say, okay, for a particular URI, say like a subdomain or a just a particular website or a particular URI, just take that URI alone and say anything that looks like this URI. If there's a match set, if there's a match for this URI, then apply this particular WAF for it. So on these three different layers, you can set up WAF policies. So these are the three WAF policy levels that we're going to be looking into in this particular demo that we're going to be going into shortly. We have an environment that we have created, which is called this juice shop right here. So this is a juice shop environment. And for the global WAF, we're going to be setting up a WAF that customers can go through, and they can go through that WAF to access all the information that we have, which is like global. And we'll be operating that from Detroit. Then we have a website called Seattle Juice Shop, which is the rectangle in the middle, whereby we are using and we are applying a WAF policy to that Seattle juice shop such that only people in Seattle will be able to access it. So it's like a corporate headquarter kind of situation. That's where the headquarters is. Only people in Seattle should be able to access it. And then we have a situation where we only have a URI, a WAF policy just for employee login. That's the small, the last rectangle to the right. There, we only want people who work in the particular location with a particular IP to be able to access that. That IP will be the internal IP of employees. So this is a practical example of what our demo is going to look like. And in this example, we have to restrict access in three different ways that we have just mentioned. So we're going to use that example and make sure that when customers try to access, they are going through the appropriate one and they are denied from accessing what they don't need. And the way it works is, how do we maintain that, and how do we make sure that the appropriate security settings for each resource is being applied? The more specific the policy, the higher its priority. So as the per URI WAF for employee login on the right will be processed when a request is coming before the WAF global policy. So the one to the outermost right will be processed first because it's very, very specific. It goes down, it drills on a granular level. So when a request is coming and it matches that URI, it's going to be processed first before all the WAF, the global WAF to my left, which is the blue general one. In the same vein, if there's a WAF global policy and a per site policy like the one in Seattle, that's the left and the middle one, and they're both associated to a listener, then the per site policy would override the global WAF policy for that listener. Again, because the per site is more specific than the general. When you see the global WAF, just assume it's the general. That's the way I always like to let people be clear. So just change that global to general in your mind. So that's general, then there's specific, then there is like granularly specific. So that's how the three different levels work. So in global WAF policy, everybody gets the global policy for login and all the base security settings. So basically your basic security guidelines can go in there, but then access to other portals or a local or regional team access, all of that are best managed by using WAF policy. So either you use per site or you use per URI. So you can manage all other access, making sure that you kind of like separate what's going on. You have that logical demarcation going on for you. And one more information about precise WAF policy is that you can protect multiple sites with different security needs, all behind a single WAF by using per site policies. So for a website, the listener's policy takes effect for just that listener, but the application gateway global policy will apply to all other listeners and even the path-based rules that don't have a specific policy assigned to them. So it's it's that specific. In the case of the WAF URI policy, which is the employee login here, only the most granular policy is applied in the per URI policy, and the other policies won't apply to that URI. And also, I think you should also know that there's no limit on the number of policies that you can create. They can be associated with any combination of application gateways, listeners, and path-based rules. So this is how it's going to be working. These are the three methods that you can use right now to make that happen. So you can create that segregation and customize your securities for the three different levels that we have. So this is the juice shop we currently have. This is the demo environment that we're going to be working with, and Camila is going to be taking over from here. And she will do a quick demo for these three scenarios where you can see how a global WAF can be applied And then a regional access for your Seattle branch in the middle can be applied. And then you can also go further granular for the employee login page. So thank you. Camila, please, you can take over from here.
All right, can I take over and share? Hi, everybody. This is Camila Martins. I will be taking over for a quick demo to illustrate what Toby just described with how we can apply the WAF policies at different levels for the applications running on our application gateway. Let me share my screen. It's never too many times to repeat this. We're having our Q&A problems with the built-in Q&A in Teams. So if you do have any questions at this time or towards the end of this webinar, you can go to this website right here on my screen and post your questions there. We have SMEs answering live right now. All right, let's get rid of this. Okay, so let's start. First, I am going to walk you through the deployment of a use case that we have on Application Gateway. This is one application gateway we created for this use case. We are calling Juice Shop. The name of our business, Juice Shop, is an open source application we are using in this case here. Does anyone have any comments? I hear a few sounds in the background.
Sorry, Camila, that was me. My bad.
No problem. All right. Thanks. No problem. Okay, so this is a web application that we launched inside of an application gateway. In here, I want to walk through some of the backend pools that we have so you understand what I'm going to demonstrate when it comes to the WAF setup. So we have 3 different backend pools here. We have our Juice Shop business website in Detroit, and we have our Juice Shop business website in Seattle. These are 2 different websites. They're running in the same application gateway. We are a corporate business, but we allow, each city to have their own prices, their own juice versions, so they manage their own websites. And another backend pool that we have is our actual corporate apps. It's running on a VM. So this one technically is not managed, by each individual juice shop. It's managed by corporate. In our front end, we are going to have 2 primary listeners. So that means these are the, the sites that consumers can connect to. We have the Juice Shop listener and the Seattle listener, and their URLs can be seen right here under our listener configurations. So you can see that if I go to www.seattlejuiceshop.com, I will get to the backend that is appropriate for my Seattle shop. And if I go to detroitjuiceshop.com, I'm going to get to my Detroit shop website. Now, this is pretty straightforward, but then you're like, well, what about that corporate, backend that you have? Where's that going to go? So that's how we have our rules set up. We have, for our Detroit site, we have a default basic rule. This means that people are connecting to the Detroit website and they get the Detroit site, and that's where it ends. There's only a direct rule to get to that to get to that web application. But when they get to the Seattle shop website, you can see that they're using a path-based type of rule. So there's 2 things that could happen here when they access the Seattle website. One of them is just going directly to the consumer, so the public facing the client accessing the Juice Shop website. But if we are employees, we have an extra rule in here that is a path-based rule. If we go to that site and add /employees in the URI, in the full path, that will actually take you to the backend VM running our corporate apps. So instead of taking you to the default public website where you can order your juice, it will, if you go /employees, it will route you to a different backend where the corporate apps are running. So this is how this is set up. Like quick rundown of the environment from an application perspective. Now, where do we go from here? So we are focusing on WAF, of course, today, and we want to talk how we can apply different WAF policies at different layers. So we have 3 policies here to illustrate this scenario. I'm going to start with the base WAF policy. So when we have Of course, I'm giving you, this is just a, how do you say, like it's our, use case. Real life is different. Real businesses are different. But I am going with the concepts that I want to have for my business. I want to have a base WAF policy. What is my base WAF policy? It is a WAF policy that all of the juice shops in the United States or in the world will be part of when they are published in this app gateway. So any sites that are that are delivered via this application gateway will receive this base policy. And what is the base policy right now? My decision was that the only setting that I have that is what matters for this case is that my policy is in detection mode. So this will be like the bare minimum security features that I want to apply to my juice shop website across the board. That means that I have managed rules enabled. So my set of OS protection is here. I have all of them enabled, but I have them set to detection only. So that means, well, customers are not going to get blocked, attackers are not going to get blocked. But let's say if there was an event, a security attack or something, I could at least help my shop owners like investigate what happened. At least I would have logs. So that's the base. Okay. And you can see that the base is applied, is associated right now with my application gateway. So it's right here. This applies to every site in my application gateway at this moment. So I want to go to my, let's see what happens in this case. So one of my sites, my Detroit shop is right here. And this site is, following in the overarching, the base policy that I just described. That means that there is a WAF in front of this website, but the WAF is only in detection mode. It's not acting like it wants to block something. I am going to do a quick, let me find my command. I am going to go ahead, do a quick SQL injection attack here. So I'm going to go to account. I'm going to go to login. And we have an attacker. We come in here, we do a quick, super simple SQL injection command. What the SQL injection is trying to do is identifying like the first available username and password in the database and just using that value to try and log in. And if I come in here, I actually did log in, and I logged in as admin. So my attack worked in this case. Now let's move on. And again, it worked because I have a policy set to detection mode only. Now let's go to the next set of policies. This thing is going to drive me crazy now. Okay, so the next set of policy here is about our Seattle website. In this policy, I am associating it with the site level. And when we talk about site level, it means it's associated with a specific listener. So in here, if you go to the associated application gateways, we can see that my association type is actually a listener and not the whole app gateway itself. And I have listed here that it's my Seattle listener that I am protecting. So what could have happened here in the real world? In the real world, it could have been maybe a different business unit in your company that has more strict requirements, and maybe they have to comply with different, standards, and they have to have a more strict set of rules, or opposite way, it could even be less strict set of rules. So what is the difference in this particular policy? What we did in this policy is that we are keeping the same type of security level. So all of the bot protection rules are enabled, all of the OWASP protection rules are enabled, but instead of being detection mode, we bumped it to a level up. We put it on prevention mode. So the Seattle people, they were like, we are more advanced, we're more secured. We want to manage our own site and we want to manage our own WAF, and we are ready to put it in prevention mode. We want to be like super active on our security, and we are going to do this. So they created this policy, they applied it to their specific site, and they are in prevention mode. So what happens here? So now I am in the Seattle website. I'm like, okay, I am going to try to attack the juice shop. I'm going to try to get some free juice. Then I am going to perform that same attack that we just did in the Detroit website that was only in detection mode, but this time we're in prevention mode. When I perform the very same attack, now our WAF is acting and saying, nope, you can't do this. We see that you're trying to do a SQL injection attack. The pattern, there was a match in our rule set pattern, and we're blocking you. So this is what's happening that would be different. And then you can think about how could this apply to your environment. You know, as you can see, if the Detroit shop was ready, they could be, you know what, we are ready to manage our own WAF policy now. We want to do the same thing. All they needed to do is the same approach. They would come here and they would say, well, we want to be we want to be protected. I'm in the wrong one. Sorry, guys. They can come here. They want to be protected equally. They can come over here and simply enable a different WAF policy for them and tweak it and adjust it as needed. Now, one of the things that I want to mention before I go into the last policy, which is going to be our URI policy, is that the logic of the policy triggers for the most granular policy. So if there is a match at a URI level, there's a WAF policy for our URI, which is a route path, that policy will be processed, and that no longer applies to a website level policy or a global policy. And if something matches at a website level, that the global policy won't be processed either. So you need to remember that these policies they have no inheritance. The most granular one is the one that will match and will be processed. It has no relationship with the other ones whatsoever at that point. Keep that in mind. And then the last use case is our URI WAF policy. And you remember that I said that our Seattle corporate area is the one that has the employees portal. So I think I call it employees HTML. I have it over here. So if somebody goes there, in my case, you can see I'm forbidden, but let's go through the policy and explain why. So this policy is specific to our corporate apps. It takes us to a different backend, which is managed by our corporate. It's also in prevention mode. So that means that we want to ensure that access is being blocked or allowed in an enforced way here. We are keeping managed rules, but on top of that, we added a custom rule. So the type of custom rule that I added here is IP based. So let's say that the employees that work in the juice shop, they want to request time off. They want to see their paycheck. I don't know. They want to give kudos to their buddies. They need to log into the employee portal. And we have provided them with managed devices. They are being managed by Intune or by another type of VPN connection. We know the IP addresses that they are coming from. We have trusted sources that they can access the corporate portal with. That means that I know which IP addresses they're coming from. I can say, okay, if a given IP address is not white, if a given IP address is whitelisted, then you can give access to that resource. As of right now, I'm giving myself, I gave this just for an example, but I'm saying I'm blocking myself. I'm saying, okay, this is my public IP address as of right now. I can say, hey, if the IP contains this, then deny me. But that's not the logic I actually want to do. I just wanted to show you all that I'm being denied at this moment. The true logic would lie like this. If the IP addresses are not these IPs that I trust, so now I'm trusting me, I'm coming from a trusted location, then deny the traffic. So I'm going to update this now. Wish me luck, because I'm hoping it works. We're live. And then I'm going to try again to access the employee portal. And now that I'm coming from a trusted location, it should let me access that portal. Let's see. In the meantime, while that updates, I want to show you guys some of the log information so you can see how you can identify which policies were applied for certain events. Let me find some of my queries here. All right, so we are going to start filtering by application gateways. So I'm searching by resource type. That way I get to see both types of logs that we have. We have access logs and we have WAF logs for application gateways. Let's go there. And I am going to filter. This will be specific to the WAF logs though. So let's see that. I am filtering by my policy scope field in my log. One sec, let me adjust a few things on my query. Okay, what time is it? That sounds about right. Okay. So I am saying, let's look for application gateway logs and let's look for logs in which we see global under policy scope. The global means that it's the first use case we talked about. It is the policy that is in detection mode, and it's the policy that would apply to anything under my application gateway, unless there was a more restricted policy applied to a listener or a route path. In this case, this would be equivalent to that first attack that we did that went through. So the attack actually the WAF knew that the attack happened because it is logged, but it didn't take any action to block it because we are in detection mode only instead of prevention mode. So this is my attack here. So we can see that it's the login URI. We can see that it was an injection attack, and we can see that the action was matched. So it identified as a SQL injection, and we can also see that this was from my Detroit site. The Detroit site is the one that is not enforcing any WAF, and we can see that the policy we're talking about is the global one. And I think if I do, let me search just a second. Let me include this here. I want to show you one quick difference on the status. So we have, let's see here. Just a moment. That's what I wanted to see. The mandatory rule here. I want to show you. I thought my status was showing and it's not showing. I don't know why. When here it is. I was looking for the action. When the WAF is in the detection mode, what you're going to see in action as detected means that this attack would have been blocked if it was in prevention mode. But so the engine went all the way through, it matched rules and it detected an attack, but that's where it ends. It only detects it, it logs it, and it's done. We're going to see a similar thing in the other example, and this is going to read blocked instead of detected. So it's the same event, but the way that you're going to see that the action is different is because the mode of the WAF is different. Okay, so then we are here. Let's check for the same thing, but instead of a global policy scope, we are going to check for a listener. And the listener is the policy that we applied to our Seattle juice shop website. And that's the same policy as the global one, but instead of detection mode, it's in prevention mode. Let's take a look. Here it is. Again, SQL injection, matched. Let me find, here you go. Difference is that we were attacking the Seattle juice shop, and there is an explanation, again, that the WAF scope was at a listener level and not at a global level. Let's look for that transaction ID real quick, because I want to show you the event being blocked. It's probably this one. Mandatory rule here. There you go. So that's the primary difference that you would see when handling policies in detection mode versus prevention mode. Now we know for sure that that particular request was actually blocked. This is showing in the logs. You saw it on the website, but here's how you see it in the logs. And now let's go back to our final URI rule here, in which I am allowing only trusted IP addresses to access my corporate web app. And I was blocked before. And now that I'm coming from a trusted location, I can actually access my Just Shop corporate employee portal. And this information would be showing in our logs in a similar fashion. And I just want to quickly show you how you would identify something that comes from a URI level policy. So instead of looking for a listener here in the policy scope, you would look for a location policy scope. And let's see what we find. There you go. This is our URI. And we're blocked. And our policy scope is location. We know that it was a Seattle shop. We know that it was the employees URI. This one was blocked initially. That was my first test. That was my first test before I allowed myself, but that was being blocked based on that custom rule, and it will give you the reason why here it was being blocked. So this is again, I know super simple use case, but I think it helps illustrate how you have this freedom to create different levels of association and even allow different business units or technical IT groups inside of your team to be responsible for managing their own WAF policies. And not to mention that, as you know, every application has different backends, has different behavior. So when you are working on addressing false positives, when you are, for example, trying to create some of the exclusions, or maybe turning some rules on or off, depending if it is safe to do so or not, you could use a dedicated WAF policy to each one of those applications to truly fine-tune the settings of the WAF policy to meet the true requirements of your application. It is very hard to have a policy that is like, one size fits all. It doesn't work that way, and this is one way to do it. So I am done with my demo. I think that we can probably do a Q&A. I don't know if Toby had anything else to add, but I'm ready for any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, Camila.
Thank you, guys. If you don't mind just showing the ad hoc link you created for the Q&A, and just to remind the folks that we're still having the Q&A message issue. So we were directing everybody to the tech community forum, and the link for that is aka, yep, that's the one, aka.ms/Azure Network Security Community. We did receive some questions there and answered, so maybe let's just give it another minute for the folks who did not have the chance and have their opportunity to resubmit.
Yep. So all the questions currently have been answered on this forum post, but there's one that I would like to call attention to and see if I can get Camila or Toby to comment on it here, which is somebody had a question about granularity of the policy assignment versus restrictiveness and which one takes precedence. So if you have a less restrictive policy on a more granular application, so say at the listener level or the URI level, what takes precedence? Can you talk a little bit about that precedence versus in terms of granularity versus restrictiveness?
Oh, absolutely. It is not based on the policy settings, whether they're more restricted or less restricted. That the policy settings do not matter. They do not come in the picture. What comes in the picture is the association level of the policy. So the granularity of the association level is what comes first. So if I associate a policy to my URI, to my route path, that is the most granular. That means that if somebody accesses that route path, that is the policy that will get applied. Now, whether the policy is more restrictive or less restricted, or has settings that are more intense, that does not matter. That is going to be whatever the policy is configured as. It is truly only related to the association level.
Thank you. And another follow-up question on that. Is there any difference between the managed rule sets and the custom rules in terms of how the policies are processed?
No. So there is no difference. Okay, so if we have different WAF policies, so let's follow up on the policy that will be processed is the most granular one. Now that the most granular policy gets processed, there is a logic inside of the policy itself. Then there is a logic in which the custom rules are processed first and the managed rules are processed afterwards. So if you have a policy, whichever association level they kick in, once that goes through, the custom rules gets processed first and managed rules get processed right after.
Okay, and what about inheritance? So if you have a set of managed rules applied at the global level, but you only, like in your demo, have custom rules applied at the URI level, is it the case that only the custom rules are applied, only the policy that is most granular is applied, or does it also inherit policy settings from the global policy?
Yeah, it will. So it will not inherit. So it will not inherit. So let's start from there at all. But then what I am doing here, what I am actually doing an extra thing. So there is no inheritance, but in my URI policy, I am doing the managed rules also. I have them, and on top of them, I have custom rules. So that means that at the URI, my custom rule will be processed first, and my managed rules will be processed after. But with my global policy, my base policy, since I have no custom rules will be processed, and then my managed rules will be processed right away. But there is no connection between these two policies. There is zero inheritance between them.
I think that's a really important answer. And in the absence of inheritance, so now I think a big recommendation to give would be make sure that you always have your managed rules applied to your more granular policies, knowing that it's not going to inherit. And so how would we recommend that customers go about duplicating those policies? Is it kind of exporting an ARM template from the global policy to make sure you're duplicating the managed rule sets correctly?
Well, no, I think that depends. That will really depend on which type of application we're protecting and what types of controls we need to ensure we're enforcing. So, for example, it is possible that my base policy is just like a catch-all, for my company. I just have this because I want to make sure that if no one else creates a more granular policy to handle their application specifically, at least I have some visibility on what could have happened here to any like orphaned, applications. But the base policy doesn't have to be treated as like a like a minimum guidance for your own other more granular policies. Like it is possible that my my base policy has all of the rules enabled, but when I go to my website policy, I go like, I know that the base company policy has everything enabled, but I'm looking through here and I am pretty sure that my let's say I'm pretty sure that my app has no PHP in the code. Like it literally has no PHP in it. I can go ahead and disable this, because I know my app. And it doesn't matter what the big base policy is saying or doing. I am tuning this specifically to my site. So now the choice is to have more or less. It depends on each use case.
Okay, well, thank you very much again, Camilla and Toby, for an excellent presentation, and also to the team who were answering questions, regardless of the fact that we had the live event Q&A technical issue we were able to recover nicely on the tech community side. And as a reminder that we'll be hosting the next webinar on Thursday, Ashish Kapila and Mohit Kumar, both with the Azure Network Security team, will be presenting on exploring intrusion detection and protection capability using Azure Firewall Premium. And if you would like to register, as well as to ensure that you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements, you can visit us at aka.ms/security community. And while you're there, please, if there's easy ways to navigate and find the resources and learning content relevant to our security products and the communities around. A good start would be just simply by browsing our bite-sized product videos, the Ninja trainings, recordings of the past webinars, the GitHub communities, and more. Also, please, when you have some time, we would love to hear your feedback on how we can improve the webinars, and you can do this by participating at aka.ms/security webinar feedback. In case, just to remind, the webinar questions discussion forum will remain open just in case you have additional questions or comments. And you can access this by going to aka.ms/Azure Network Security Community. There's a topic that Ryan created called Webinar Questions, so that's where we're answering your questions. And lastly, I want to thank all of you for being part of our community and for joining us on these webinars, and we hope to see you next time. Goodbye.